Hi kids, welcome to Kids Stories Without Borders.
Once upon a time, on the edge of a quiet and peaceful countryside, where tall reeds swayed gently in the summer breeze and golden sunlight danced across the water, there was a beautiful pond. Nestled among the reeds, in a soft and cozy nest woven from dry grass and feathers, a mother duck sat patiently upon a clutch of eggs. She had been waiting for many days, and today she felt it. One by one, the eggs began to crack. Tiny golden beaks pushed through the shells, and fluffy yellow ducklings tumbled out into the world, blinking at the bright morning light with curious, joyful eyes. The mother duck counted her babies with a heart full of love. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all bright and yellow and perfectly round. But one egg remained, the largest egg of all. It had not yet hatched. She waited patiently. The other ducklings peeped and played, while their mother sat still, keeping the last egg warm. Until at last, with a loud crack, the final egg split open. But the creature that climbed out was unlike anything anyone had expected. It was large, it was gray. Its feathers were dull and scraggly, its neck too long, its feet too big. The mother duck stared in silence. Still, she was his mother. She nuzzled him gently and whispered, "Welcome to the world, little one." And though he was different, she loved him as much as all the others. The next morning, she led her ducklings to the pond for their very first swim. The yellow ducklings slipped into the water like little golden boats, and the gray duckling, to everyone's surprise, swam beautifully. But on the riverbank, the other animals had already noticed. The hens clucked. The old drake ruffled his feathers. Even the ducks from nearby nests waddled over to stare and whisper. "What is that strange creature?" clucked one hen. "It is far too big," said another. "And what an ugly color," sneered the old drake. The words were sharp, and they carried far across the still water. The gray duckling heard every word. He ducked his head beneath the water, pretending not to listen. But the words had already found their way inside his heart. Days passed, and the teasing did not stop. It grew worse. The other ducklings refused to swim beside him. The hens pecked at him. Even the girl who fed the animals shooed him away with her apron. One evening, the gray duckling sat alone by the water's edge as the sun sank low. He looked at his reflection and saw exactly what they all saw, a strange, gray, awkward creature. And he felt very, very small. That night, while the farm slept, the gray duckling made a decision. He could not stay in a place where he did not belong. Quietly, without a sound, he slipped away into the darkness. He walked and walked until he reached a wide, wild marsh at the edge of the forest. It was lonelier here, and colder, and the wind cut through his thin feathers, but at least no one laughed at him. In the marsh, he met 2 wild geese. They were kind and boisterous, and they did not seem to mind his appearance at all. "You are ugly, friend," one laughed warmly, "but you swim well. Come with us." But before the duckling could answer, 2 loud bangs split the air. Hunters. The geese took to the sky in a wild panic and were gone. The duckling pressed himself flat against the reeds and did not breathe. When silence finally returned, he was alone again. More alone than ever. He lifted his head from the reeds and looked out at the empty sky where his new friends had been. He wandered for many days across fields and rivers and lonely country roads. Autumn was coming. The leaves turned to fire above him and fell in golden showers around his gray, small body. One cold evening, the duckling stumbled upon a tiny cottage. Through the frosted window, warm firelight glowed, and he could see an old woman sitting in a rocking chair with a cat in her lap. The old woman found him shivering on her doorstep and took him in. She was nearly blind and thought perhaps he might be a fine fat duck who would lay eggs. He was given a warm corner and something to eat. But the old woman's cat hissed and arched its back, and the hen clucked with irritation. "Can you lay eggs?" demanded the hen. "No," said the duckling quietly. "Can you purr?" sneered the cat. "No," he said again. "Then you are quite useless," said the hen, with a flick of her wing. The duckling said nothing. He looked out the small window at the sky and felt something deep inside him, a longing he could not name. He could not stay. Whatever he was looking for, it was not here. One morning, when the old woman opened the door, the gray duckling slipped out into the cold air and did not look back. Winter came with a fury. The ponds froze over. The ground became hard as iron. Snow fell in great silent curtains, covering the world in white, until everything looked like a dream. The gray duckling struggled to find food. He struggled to stay warm. His feathers were ruffled and damp, and his feet ached from the cold. He was more exhausted than he had ever been in his short life. One evening, near a half-frozen pond, his legs finally gave out beneath him. He collapsed in the snow at the water's edge, and the cold closed around him like a hand. He closed his eyes. A kind farmer, passing by on his evening walk, found the small, still creature. Without a second thought, he tucked the duckling inside his warm coat and carried him home through the snow. Inside the farmhouse, the duckling was warmed by the fire, given water and grain, and allowed to rest. The farmer's children were gentle and curious, but the duckling was still so afraid he fluttered about in a panic. In the commotion, he knocked over the milk pail and sent the flour flying, and the farmer's wife chased him out the door with a broom. Back into the cold he went, stumbling into the frozen world once more. But somehow he survived. Day by day, through the bitterest cold, he found small pockets of open water, a forgotten crust of bread, a sheltered hollow beneath a snow-covered bush. He endured. And then, one morning, something changed. It was a subtle thing at first, a softness in the air, a warmth in the light that hadn't been there the day before. The snow began to melt. Spring was coming. The gray duckling lifted his head and breathed in the new air. It smelled of earth and water and something he had almost forgotten, hope. He stretched his wings and was astonished at how large they had grown. He was no longer small. He was no longer the clumsy, scraggly creature who had tumbled from that great egg. He was tall and strong and graceful. Though he did not yet know it, one morning, 3 magnificent white swans appeared on the glittering pond, their wings like folded clouds, their necks like the curve of a question mark, their beauty breathtaking and serene. Something stirred deep inside him at the sight of them. A recognition he could not explain. He felt drawn to them with a force stronger than fear. Trembling, he swam toward them, his head bowed low. "I know I am ugly," he whispered, "but I could not help coming to you. Do with me what you will." He closed his eyes and waited, for the pecking, for the cruelty, for all he had always known. But no unkindness came. Instead, he heard a soft ripple of water. He felt a warmth near his face, and one of the swans touched him gently, so gently, with the tip of its great white wing. He opened his eyes and saw his reflection in the still spring water, and he could not believe what looked back at him. For there was no ugly gray duckling, there was a swan, a beautiful, white, magnificent swan. He had never been a duckling at all. He had been a swan's egg, lost among the ducks, too large, too different, too extraordinary for the nest in which he'd found himself. The other swans swam close and circled him, rustling their great white wings in welcome. Children on the bank cried out in delight, "Look, a new swan, and it is the most beautiful of all." He stretched his long white neck toward the sky. He spread his great wings, and for the first time in his life, he did not feel strange or wrong or too much. He felt exactly right. He thought of the cold winter, of the marsh, of the frozen pond where he had fallen, of every cruel word and every lonely night, and he understood. All of it had led him here. All of it had made him who he was. From that day forward, the beautiful swan lived among his own kind, gliding through sparkling waters, filling the mornings with grace, and carrying always in his heart the knowledge that suffering had not broken him. It had shaped him. And if you ever feel too large for your nest, too different for your flock, too strange for the place where you were born, Remember the ugly duckling. Remember that what the world calls ugly, time may yet call magnificent. For the most beautiful things in the world do not always begin beautifully. Sometimes they begin in a cold nest with a broken shell and a long, long winter. But they find their way. They always find their way.
Did you enjoy the story? Tap subscribe for more.